Hakadosh Boker Tov, Shavua Tov. We are on Daf Zayin Amud Aleph 77A1, where it says over there, Sham Moshav Semel Akina Makne, Vayave Oti El Chatzar Bet Hashem Pnimi Vine Petach Echal Hashem Ben Haolam V'Mizbeach Ke 25 people. Achoreim El Echal Hashem, their backs towards the Echal of Hashem. V'nehem Kedman, their faces towards the east. V'hem HaMishtachavim Kedman HaShemesh, and they are bowing down to the Shemesh. So says the Gemara, Mimashma Shneimar, from the fact that it's mashma that it says Ufneim Kedma, that their faces are towards the east. I don't know that their backs are towards the Echal of Hashem. But what does it come to teach you? They were revealing themselves, right? Which means mamash, they were actually revealing their back parts, right? To be mevazeh the Bet HaMikdash. They were disgracing the Bet HaMikdash. What? These are the how do you call them? These are the people during the time of the Bet HaMikdash. And therefore, Amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu to Michael, it says HaKadosh Baruch Hu to Michael HaMalach. Let's remember, Michael is the Sar of Israel. Michael, Sarcha Umatecha. Right, your nation is gone off. Amar lefanav ribono shalom dayo lo tovim shebem. Well, forgive them for the tzaddikim that they have. Amar lo, he says, ani soref otam v'lo tovim shebem. I'm going to burn everyone. I'm going to burn everyone. Also the good ones, they're also going to be punished. Miyad, immediately it says, v'yomer el haish lavush badim v'yomer bal benot lagalgal el tacha lakruv malech ofnecha kachalesh mimino lakruvim uzrok ala'ir v'yvo le'enai. So basically there was a mamash, a gezerah, that this is on Gabriel, because Gabriel is the malach of Esh, not of mine, right? Michael is of mine and Gabriel is of Esh, of fire, and he went and he burnt the entire city. So mamash, he just burnt the entire cities. So here it says that Gabriel did not take the gechalim themselves, because then it would be even harder, but rather he took them from the kruv, right? And then he went, and then it gets a little bit colder. So Amar Rav Chana bar Bizna, Amar Rav Shimon Chasid al Maleh lo nitztanenu gechalim. If it wasn't for the fact that it actually cooled down a little bit, miyado shel kruv liyado shel Gabriel, from the hands of the kruv to the hands of the Gabriel. What? The kruvim.
The kruv held the fire.
El tachad la kruv. That's what it says here. He went el tachad la kruv. So basically, he went and he took it from underneath. That means he took the gechalim, but he didn't take the gechalim themselves. He took it from the kruv, the kruvim. So he says here, if it wasn't that they didn't calm down, there wouldn't be nothing left. And it says, I did exactly what I did. They went, they took him out from the Mechitza HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and they gave him they gave him lashes. Remember that we get lashes down here. How many are the lashes? 39, because it's 3 times the bar mitzvah. When are we punished down here below? Bar mitzvah, age of 13. So 3 times 13, right? It's 39. Upstairs, when do you started getting punished?
20.
20. 3 times 20?
3 times
60. So therefore, always the makot in the shamayim are always 60. The makot down here below is always 39. Okay, you'll see it all throughout Gemara, all throughout Shas. Whenever it's written that they came and they give the son lashes, 60 lashes. It was always 60. Or 60 lashes. What? Yeah, but still, they gave him in his sense. You're right. For us, it's a body. For them, it's their neshama, whatever it is that they have. Okay? Amrullah, they told them, Ilo avata lo avata. If you didn't do it at all, you didn't do it at all. But avata, if you did it already, amai lo avata. So why didn't you do exactly like the way that you were commanded? Ve'odon, first, and furthermore, tavat, did you actually do it? Let lach, right? And meshivin al kakala. Says 1 second, you're not supposed to be meshivin al kakala, which means it's not derech eretz for shliach lachzor to tell him that he did when he was mekalkel et shlichuto, but he has to keep quiet. Meaning, how does he have the audacity to come back and say, yeah, I did exactly what you said? Well, I did what you said. You didn't do anything. Okay, fine. So now it says the Gemara, Aituha ledubiel sarad de parseh. They brought Dubiel Malach, that he was a saram of the Persians. Yeah, there's a new Malach. Malach Dubiel. Yeah? Dubiel, that's what it says here. Yeah? Dubiel. He was in charge of the Persians, of the Parsim. Ve'ukme b'chariken, they put him instead of Gabriel. Ve'shimesh 21 yom. And he was 21 days instead of Gabriel. So they went, they gave him a 21 melachim, right? And a port city, in the name of Mashig. Amar Dubiel said, Ketivu li Yisrael be'akarga. Right? So you have to give me Israel as the ones that also have to give me pras as well, that they have to give me taxes as well. So Katvule. Ketivu li Rabbanan be'akarga. So he said, give me the rabbis. Katvule. They gave it to him as well. Yeah, Beidna deba'u lemichtam. When they were going to sign the Gezerah, Amar Gabriel me'achorei pargod ve'amar, he went behind the pargod and he said, Shav lachem mashkim ekum achrei shevet, uchlei lechem atzavim ken niten lidido shena. What does that mean, ken niten lidido shena? Amar biyitzchak, these are neshoten shel tamidei chachamim shenidod shena ba'olam hazeh zechol olam haba. He says, look, the wise of the tamidei chachamim, they're taking away sleep in their eyes in this world, right? And therefore they're going to be zochel olam haba. Which means that tamidei chachamim, they're learning late at night. By the time they come home, and the wives are waiting for them. So the merit that the wives are waiting for them, that in itself is already enough that they shouldn't have it. They didn't pay attention to Gabriel. Amar lefanav, so he said in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, B'no shel olam, if you had all the chokhmot of olam in one branch of the scale, and Daniel ish chamudot in the second one, lo nimtza machri et kulam, he's not going to be against all of them. Meaning Daniel ish chamudot will be against everybody. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, mi hu zeh melamed zechut al banai. Who's the one that's being melamed zechut on my children? Amru lefanav, they said, the malachim said, Ribono shel olam, it's Gabriel. Amar lahem yavo, tell him to come. Shneimar v'ani bati bidvarecha. Amar lehu leul, yikanes. Ailu, they brought him in. Ata shkechel Dubiel, he saw Dubiel, denakale leigarte bideh, that he had, that he get it in his hands. Ba'al amin mineh, so Gabriel wanted to take it away and to throw it away. But Dubiel bil'ah, right, he swallowed it. Ikadamni michtava kativa, right, but it was written, michtam, but it wasn't signed. Ikadamni, some people say, af michtam nam yechatima, it was already signed. Kedebale, machik l'mineh, but once he swallowed it, the chatima was erased. Hainu de malchuta de pras, ikadev kaga, that's why the malchut pras, there's some tamidei chachamim that they're obligated to pay, and some tamidei chachamim that they're exempt to pay. Because of this. Because of what happened, that basically he swallowed it, that the signature came off, this, that. So that was all depending there what happened. Fine. Then it says Vani yotze, inesar Yavan. So it was coming out, and the Sar of Yavan was coming. Started screaming, but nobody paid attention, which means it didn't help the words of Gabriel against the Sar of Yavan. The Ibayteimar, if you want, you could answer. Right? It says over here, Mirechitza deikre inui menalan. Sorry. So right now we just finished. Right? This is a side story to do with Gabriel, Dubiel, all these malachim. Now we're going back to that which we spoke about, the Yisur Rechitza Kippur, and we brought another Mikor. Right? If you want, you can answer Rechitza deikre inui menalan. How do we know that Rechitza is called inui? Mehacha, from here in the Pasuk it says, Zechtiv, Ulaviatar HaKohen Amar HaMelech Anatot Lech על שדך כי איש מוות אתה וביום הזה לא עמיתך כי נשאת את ארון השם אלוקים לפני דוד אבי כי תנית בכל אשר יתנה אבי. So basically we see that during the time when David HaMelech was running away from Avshalom his son, that Eviatar was carrying the Aron in front of David, he tanu David umlaved, so everyone fasted. Uchtiv, and it's written by David, ki amru ha'am ra'ev v'ayef etzameh b'midbar. What does it mean exactly, ra'ev? It says over here, ra'ev milechem etzameh b'mayim. They were hungry for bread because they didn't eat, and they were thirsty from drinking. Right? They didn't drink. Ayef mimai. What does it mean they were ayef? Lav merechitza. Is it not talking about that they were tired of killing? So says the Gemara, it's not true. It says why? Vedilma min nilata sandal. Maybe it's going to be from nilata sandal, right? Which means that it's from nilata sandal in itself. So Elama Rabbi Yitzchak, but rather Rabbi Yitzchak says mehacha from here. Maim karim al nefesh ayefa. We're talking about maim karim on nefesh ayefa, which means right they're ayef from nechitza. Right? He says over here, what does this mean? So when a person comes and they wash themselves with cold water, that calms them down. So ask the Gemara, maybe it means that they're drinking. Not just stam that they're washing themselves, they're drinking. So answers the Gemara, al nefesh ayefa. It's not written bin nefesh, al nefesh ayefa. What does that mean? That the water actually goes inside of their bodies. So since it's written al, right, it's mashma that it's coming on from the outside. So therefore, you see from here that ayifa means from rechitza. What? The neilata sandal melana. How do we know now about neilata sandal? How do we know that you're not supposed to tie your shoes, right? And that's considered inui, meaning you're not supposed to wear shoes. How do we know that's considered an affliction if you don't have shoes? Tichtiv ודוד עולה במעלה הזיתים, עולה ובוכה וראשו לא חפוי, והולך יחף. He says he was walking barefoot. יחף ממאי, lav or yonatan nirat sandal. So from here we see that when he was running away from David, right, when David HaMelech was running away from Avshalom, he was hitana baderech. What is the inui? He was going barefoot. So says the Gemara, no, but mevidilma misusia uminataka. He says, no, maybe yachef means that he was walking with his legs, that he wasn't on his horse and with everything like that. That's what it means, yachef. So rather the Gemara says, you're right. Elamara v'nachman b'yitzak me'acha from another pasuk. Lechu fitachta asak me'al motnecha v'na'alcha tachlotz me'al. Take off your shoes. Right, that's by Yeshaya Navi. Uchtiv and it's written, v'yasken aloch arom v'yachef. Yachef from what? Are we not talking about nalat sandal? So you see from here that yachef from David HaMelech was the same thing. Because if it's using the same terminology, and it says yachef and yachef, here we're talking about nalcha tachlotz me'al. You're taking off your shoes. And therefore we're talking about he went aloch arom v'yachef. So yachef means the same thing. So says the Gemara, ve'ema b'minalim umtulaim. Maybe we're talking about shoes, right? That it doesn't mean that Mamashi was barefoot. He had shoes, but he had these shoes which were torn. If you're not going to say this, arom Mamashi, you're going to say Mamashi he went bare without any clothing. Obviously he was with clothing, right? He didn't go naked. Obviously he went with clothing. Ela bivgadim bluim, but rather he went with begadim bluim, which means worn out clothing. Hachanami sotu here, it means also worn out shoes. So Ela Rav Nachman says, no, from here. Mini raglech miachef ugronech mitzimah. The pasuk says in Yirmiyahu, we're talking about that you have to stop your legs from being barefoot, and gronech and your throat from being thirsty. Mini atzmech minachet kedeshulov raglech alidechuv. You should stop yourself from sinning so your legs do not have to become revealed, which means barefoot. And stop your tongue from speaking, but so that way you don't have to go to galut, and then you're going to go into thirsty, right? So therefore, the same thing. It means that you're talking about without shoes, and this is what the Gemara actually, finishes with this, which means this is the proof, right, from this pasuk that when it says yachef, it means barefoot, right, without shoes. No. Yeah. Now it says as follows. Yeah, tashmish hamita dikra inui menalan. How do we know that now that tashmish hamikra is called inui? Tichtiv is written in pasukim te'aneh benotai v'imtikach nashim benotai. Okay, Ayin Zayin Mubet. What does that mean if you're going to take my daughters? We're talking about Lavan, when Lavan is speaking to Yaakov Avinu. So he says, if you're going to stop them from having relations. Remember that affliction is also if you're refraining from relations, which means if a husband doesn't give his wife relations, that's an affliction. And he gets punished for it. Right? The halacha states that he would have to add on to her ketubah. Every single day that he doesn't give her, he's called a rebellion or mored, and therefore he has to add on to her ketubah. Yeah, he has to add on. So therefore, when he divorces her, he has to pay her more money. Yeah, that's what's brought down. So it says, "Im te'aneh mitashmish, im tikach nashim al benotai mitzarot," which means that he's not allowed to add on extra wives, meaning that he wasn't allowed to get married to more women on the wives that he already has, because automatically it's going to be the same thing as well. The more wives that he has, the less that he's going to give to those wives that he already has. So ask the Gemara, ve'ima yidi vidi mitzarot. Why did I say both of them is referring to extra wives? Why did I say that the first one was on relations and the second one was extra wives? Maybe they're both talking about extra wives. So says the Gemara, mikativ intikach, is it written intikach, right, without a vav? Ve'imtikach. Ve'imtikach is with a vav, which means that if it would have been written imtikach without the vav, so then you could have said imtikach nashim benotai is the explanation of imte'aneh benotai. How are you going to afflict my daughters if you're going to take more wives? But the fact that he said ve'imtikach, it's an extra, they're two separate things. One of them is inui of the daughters, which is refraining from relations, and number two is taking extra wives. So says the Gemara, ve'ima yidi vidi mitzarot. Maybe they're both from tzarot. Chalet tzarot didei, ve'chalet tzarot daten le'mi'alma. One of them is the difference in between them. They're both really bad men. They're both talking about tzarot, adding extra wives. The first part of the pasuk is talking about that they shouldn't add on wives that they already had, which means that they shouldn't make Bilha and Zilpa, which they were the Pilagshim, into Gevirot like Rachel v'Leah. We already know that Rachel v'Leah were the main wives, right? Bilha and Zilpa were like the concubines. They were like, they weren't the first-class wives. They were like second-class wives. So therefore, maybe the first part of the Pasukim, Ti'aneh benotai, means that you shouldn't make, right, Bilha and Zilpa like the main wives. That's number one. And number two, from the outside. Don't bring other wives in. Dumya dim tikach, just like im tikach, which is also to do with tzarot. Always, right? Kicha, remember, is always kiddushin. You're taking a wife for yourself, right? In ikachi shisha, right? It's always, the person is going to take a wife for himself. It's always the lashon of tikach. So answers the Gemara, mi ketiv im tikach ve'im te'aneh. Is it written im tikach ve'im te'aneh? It should have been the opposite way around. Meaning, if it would have been first im tikach and then it would have been written im te'aneh, then you're right. Right? That it's talking about tzarot didei and then tzarot de alma. Okay? But he says, but im te'aneh ve'im tikach ketiv. It's written the opposite way around. So since it's written first im te'aneh and then it's written im tikach, so therefore, right, we're not talking about that, because first you would have said tzarot mimakom acher, which is im tikach, and then the tzarot of they already had. So the fact that they didn't do that, so therefore that's why obviously that's not the explanation. Okay? Amar le Rav Papa le Abaye, says Rav Papa to Abaye, ha tashmish gufa ikra inui. Do you know that the tashmish itself is already called inui? Tichtiv vayishkav otah vayanea, which means we just said that refraining from tashmish is inui. Now we're talking about that the tashmish itself is also called inui. Why? It's written that he slept with her, vayanea, and he afflicted her. That's talking about Dinah, when Shechem came and he violated Dinah. So says the Gemara, no. Amar le hatam, he said over there, sheina mi biot acherot. Right? That means basically what happened was, right? It says that after he already had relations with her, right? He didn't have relations with her afterwards. So therefore, there again, when it says vayishkavota, means he had relations with her. Vayanea, he didn't want to give her more relations. Meaning that once she already was appeased, now he wanted to have it more. You have to remember that there's such a concept that sometimes when a person does an avirah, at the beginning they don't want to do it, but once they're already there, that's it, they'll continue it. Okay? This is Tanu Rabbanan, we learned in a Braita, Asur lirchotz miktzat gufo kechol gufo. You're not allowed to wash part of your body on Kippur, just like you're not allowed to wash the entire body. But if you were dirty with titotzoa, with excrement or clay, so then you just wash it off and that's it. You're not allowed to anoint part of your body like your entire body. But if a person was sick, or he had chatzatim, which are like, boils or whatever it is in his head, so he's allowed to continue, but it's right. It's like basically it's refuah. It's not like oneg. He needs it for medicine. We learned in the Academy of Menasher. It says, you know that a woman is allowed to wash her hands, right, with water, and then she's allowed to give bread to a child, right? Because obviously in the Netilat Yadayim Shachrit she has to do. And there's no problem of rechitza, but again, there's no isur. She's not doing it because of she's enjoying herself. Amru alav Shammai Zaken shelo ratza la'achil biyado achat. They said on Shammai Zaken that he didn't want to give his child with one hand, which means that he didn't want to even wash one hand in order to give the bread. They went, they told, no, you have to wash both of your hands and you have to give him to eat. Meaning, mamash, you have to wash both of your hands and then to give him to eat, right? In order that there shouldn't be any problems. So my time out, what's the reasoning? Abaye says, Mishum Shivta. Because the name of the Ruach Ra, which is on the Yadayim, on the hands, that they don't wash their hands for Shachrit. Meaning a person that doesn't wash his hands for Netilat Yadayim Shachrit, he has this Ruach Ra'ah, which is called Shivta, which goes on the hands. So because of that, he's supposed to wash his hands. Somebody goes to see on Kippur his father, rabbi, or somebody that's greater than him in Chokhmah, and there's a nachal or tala of maim in front of him. He's allowed to go through the water and there's no problem. Meaning he has to go see them. So he's going to walk through a body of water and nothing's going to happen. So we asked the question, what, is the rabbi also allowed to go to the Talmid also? Right? So for example, let's say whether the Talmid was choleh, right, and he can't go to the rabbi. So can the rabbi go to the Talmid in order to teach him Torah? What's halacha? So I saw a zide that he went to the Talmid and his student on Kippur, and he passed through the water. So you see that it's even permitted for the rabbi to go by the Talmid. Ravashi says, no. Rav Chia Barashi who does it. No, it was Rav Chia Barashi who was going to his rabbi. So it wasn't Zide that was going, meaning that it was going to his rabbi, not to this Talmid. Rava, he permitted to the people of Avar Yamina, it's a certain city, to go through water on Kippur in order to watch their perot. Right? Amalehu Abai Rava says, writes Abai said to Rava, Tanya Misala, I've got to prove to you, Shomre perot, people that are watching over fruits. They're allowed to go until their necks in water. And Choshina, there's no problem. So therefore you see, because this is not a rechitzav tanu, meaning if a person has to travel through a body of water on Kippur, he's not doing it because he's swimming. he has to go through. So he's allowed to travel through the water. Rav Yosef Shalalahu livne bet Tarbu. So Rav Yosef, he permitted the people of Bet Tarbu, it's the name of a village, to go through water in order that they shouldn't go to a drasha, right? That there will be no hate to do resh and kippur, right? But you're allowed to do that for tzarich mitzvah. But he didn't permit them to go to their houses, right? That means he didn't let them go backwards because back to their houses wasn't a mitzvah. Abaye says, if not, right, they're not going to permit them to go back, which means this is the halacha nowadays also with a lot of the halachot of Shabbat also as well. For example, a midwife, she's allowed to go to the hospital on Shabbat. Why? She's allowed to be mechalel Shabbat in order to give birth, right? A woman to help her give birth. Can she go back home on Shabbat? So the halacha is yes. Why? Because if you're not going to permit her to go back home, she would never go. Like Atzala, all those things. If you would never permit them to go back home, they would never go. So since they have the permission to go from the first way, the exact same thing. That the next year they won't come to the drasha. Why? Because you didn't permit them to go home. So they're going to think 10 times about it. Hey, if I'm going to go, I'm not going to come back. Yeah? There are those that say, they permitted him to go and they permitted him to come back. I understand that to go, they're hearing a drasha, there's a mitzvah. But why are they coming back? So answers the Gemara, he answered back of Yosef. So basically the Hikadamra was the exact same question answer. The question is who's asking the question, who's answering the answer. Okay? And how was it said? Okay? But the same halacha. Rav Yehuda Rav Yehuda Avakaime Aguda de Nahar Papa. So Rav Yehuda and Rav Yehuda were standing by on Kippur by the Sfat Nahar Papa. Right? By the edge of the river bank of Papa. Right? That's what that was called, the Nahar Papa. Amabra de Mechatzedek. They were by a place by the Nahar, which was in front of the city of Chatzdad. Okay? Remi Bar Papa was on the other side. So he raised his voice. He says, can I pass by, right, the river, in order to ask some questions in halacha? Rav Yehuda says that Rav Shmuel Demer Taveh both of them said, Over. But you're allowed to go, and there's no isur, as long as you're not going to, because basically they used to have like a chaluk, and the clothing was inside of the clothing. So when he wanted to pick up the clothing, he had to take out his clothing from the chaluk, from the jilabiyah. Yeah, you take it out. So when he's going over through Kippur, on Kippur, he's not allowed to take out his hand, right? Why? Because there it looks like he's putting on that he's carrying the clothing anymore. So if you're not allowed to carry, because of Tintul or Ba'amot, so therefore you're not allowed to take out your hand from the clothing. So Ikadamer, there are those that say, I'm going to review Shmuel. Tanina, we already learned. You're allowed to, as long as you're not going to take your hand from outside of the chaluk. So Matki, Rav Yosef comes and he asks, during the weekday, is it permitted to do such a thing? It's written, you're allowed to come until the water gets to the karsulim, because there's no sakana. Until the loins. You're not allowed to, which means that you're not supposed to go into a water, right? That the water gets up above your loins. Because if it's already above your loins, it's already a sakana, it's dangerous. So how are you going to go through? So what does it mean that you're allowed to go through until your neck? Well, until your neck, it's dangerous. One wave, one whatever it is comes, one something comes, boom. You understand? Okay, we're not talking about much waves, because it's not it's not like the sea or whatever it is, but still, one little time, whatever it is, a person gets into trouble. So Abaye says, no, Shani Nachal Dirdifa Maya. The Nachal is different, because the Nachal that was coming from the Vevekot Kodashim is different from all the Narot, because there the Mamayim Rodfim, which means the waters are flowing. If the waters are flowing, you cannot go when it's going to be above your loins, right? But Naharot, which they're basically, the waters go very, very slowly, so then there's no sakana, even if you're going to go until, basically depends on the body of water. Some bodies of water, nothing happens. You could go even until your neck and nothing's going to happen. But if it's other bodies of water, even if it's until your loins, it's already sakana, that all of a sudden you could just, you understand? Fine. I would think that you could swim. What do you mean misachu? Shiuta. Which means, so it says here, both of them are the same thing, which means the pirush of pasuk is that the water is ga'u bezerem chazak, right? Even b'shchiyah, even if it's going to be in swimming, it's going to be the same thing. Okay? So now it says, maybe you could go by like a small little tiny boat. Yeah, Tamulomar comes teach you. So I would have thought that you could come and pass by with a sirak tana, like a small boat. Tamulomar comes teach you about telech bo ani shait. Yachol yavirenu v'uri gudah with a big one. Tamulomar v'tzia di lo yavirenu. So you can't go with any type of boat to pass them through. We're talking about on Kippur, or you're allowed to come and take a boat to pass by a little tiny place in order to get to the other side, right? In order to learn from your rabbi or whatever. So my mashma, how do we know? How do we see? The Metagem of Yosef, just like Rav Yosef was Metagem, lo tazeh betzinat hayadinu v'urni rabati lo tigzozena. Amar Rav Yehuda ben Pazi, says Rav Yehuda ben Pazi, af malach hamavet en lo reshut le'avor betocho. Even the malach hamavet has no reshut to go through this nachal in order to get into Eretz Yisrael, but it's written, bal telech bo ani shait uchtivacha mishut ba'aretz. Amar Rav Pinchas v'shum Rav Huna tzipora mayan hayotze m'bekodesh kodoshim. The mayan which is going, the spring which is coming out of the kodesh kodoshim, but techila domeh lekarnei chagavim. At the beginning, it looks like the horns of the chagavim, of the grasshoppers, right? But which are very, very thin. Once it came to the petach hayechal, nasa kichut shel sheti. It became like a long, which is a little bit thicker. Once it got to the olam, nasa kichut shel erev. It became like a much thicker one also as well. Okay? Once it got to the petach hazara, nasa kefi pach katan. It became like a small jug. Right? That's what it says over here. And that's what we learned in the Mishnah. Yaakov says, Mayim, right? Right, the water which is like the water of a pach katan, right? Atidin liot yotzin tat min tzina bayit, going to come out of the right? Mikam ve'elach, from then onwards, used to become bigger until it got to the petach ve'David. Once it got to the entrance of the house of David, na'asa kenachal shotef, it became like a big river. Shevor rochtzin, that they were able to actually wash themselves of zavin, zavon, nidot, yildot. Shneimar bayom ha'u yeh makol niftach lebet David v'yoshul shlaim lechatat u'nida. And then we continue from there. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Bezrat Hashem. Call to Batzacha.